Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. So welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And today we are talking with a woman who has stared down the dragon of overachievement. And you know how I love talking to women that overachieve. She sold almost everything she owned, grabbed her little dog, and moved to a tiny seaside town in the south of France. Okay, if you're going to start over, hello, why not there? Crystal Lynn Bell spent years mentoring women to become spiritual life coaches and then realized her real calling was helping high performing midlife women, okay, those are us, who are burning themselves out trying to hold it all together. So she's here to flip the script on midlife crisis and reframe it as midlife rebirth with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of radical self-responsibility. We love our radical responsibility. And if you've ever said yes to everything, done it all really well, and then wondered, why is my soul feeling crispy? This conversation is for you. We're talking about overachieving, burnout, selling it all, moving to the Mediterranean, and choosing peace and purpose over performance. So I really want to welcome you, Crystal, and I'm so excited to dive into this. And I always start by asking, where are you in your life? Now, we know we'll talk about locale and beautiful wherever France is. And where are you in this world today as Crystal? Who is she?
Well, I, like everyone at this time, and am at the end of 2025, which is a 9 year. And I'm going to go right for the woo woo and just say that this 9 year is a time is a time of endings and a time of new beginnings. So it is time right now to let go of old things, old mindsets, old habits, old perceptions, old perspectives, old ways of looking at things, and old ways of doing things. So where I am is that place of rebirth where I've made the decision to let all those old things go. And now I get to try on the new clothes, new hats, new shoes, new dating, new friends, new lifestyle, new pace, and all of that stuff. So that's where I
Mm.
am.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much because I've started this program called 40 Days to Prosperity. I just realized about a week ago it's 40 days until 2026. And I
Okay.
really want to explore this idea of the nine that you shared because I'm assuming that has to do with numerology or whatever woo. I'm all about the woo, you know that. We are in this shift, this 2026. We're moving into the age of Aquarius, and there's this upheaval that it appears that way to people. Chaos comes before order. And so, really speak to number one, what you mean by nine, because I know that there's people listening. This whole notion of letting go. People, women especially, we want to hang on to whatever was, and that will never allow us to blossom into the beauty of who we are. So, let's talk about the nine. And then, how are you experiencing letting go? And with the people that you're working with and associate with, how are they feeling about the perceived upheaval in the world? And I don't mean specifically, I just mean that there's so much change going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of change going on, and thank God. So
Yeah.
I'll start with that nine because I think it's really important for people to kind of grasp that um, each year we talk about like Chinese astrology. Oh, this is the year of the dragon, and this is the year of the rooster. And people kind of understand, okay, there's some kind of a dragon that is happening in this year, or something's going on where we're feeling more fiery, more powerful, more strong. Well, we live in 9 year cycles, and
Mm.
you can tell what year you're in by just adding together the numbers of the year that you're in. So we're in 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9, right? So this is a 9 year, and we are, for us, the way we're living with our numbers, 9 is the last number, which means that there's a cycle that has gone of the last 9 years. This year has been particularly hard for a number of people, because what happens during this 9 year during this 9 year is that all the lessons that you've not learned come together so that you
There they
can
are.
clean up, so that when you go into the new cycle, which
Mhm.
2026, if you add that together, you'll get 10, which is a 1, right? It reduces down to a 1. So that's a new birth for everyone. And
Mhm.
you can most certainly take your old baggage, your old habits, your old mindsets. You are more than welcome to bring those into the new year. Everyone is going to feel so much better in the new year, because that 1 is very harmonious. It feels good. It's about having authority and having power and being good in your body. And this 9 can feel like, oh, I'm getting beat down, as one of my clients said. I feel like I'm at the end of my rope. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
understand, but you were there, you're at the finish line. So that's the kind of context for what's happening. Um, the upheaval, you mentioned this being the age of Aquarius, and Pluto has moved into Aquarius. Aquarius is the 11th house, and I don't mean to be super woo-woo, but we're talking about it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but Aquarius is the sign of networks and friendships and community and belonging. And so Pluto's movement into this house means that there's this kind of new, like, turning over of how we do things in society. Pluto represents death and rebirth, death and rebirth. If you're a Scorpio, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you have no fear of this. But everybody else in the zodiac is probably going like, "What? This doesn't feel very good." But what's happening is there is growth by allowing things to die, and by rising up from those ashes like a phoenix. That's a great metaphor to use, especially for this time of year. But
Yeah.
honestly speaking, moving forward, that's just a great metaphor to have forever, because this is not a life of permanence. There's
Yeah.
nothing permanent. Everything is constantly changing. And so if we can embrace this kind of, okay, I'm going to let that die. I'm going to let these emotions die. And then I'm going to rise up with a new attitude and a new spirit. Then I think that things will be a lot easier. I know there's a lot of, political turmoil in places, and, there's a lot of upheaval in families based on politics. And I'm listening to my friends, and they're so passionate, and I love to see my friends in their passions. It's wonderful to see people, fiery. They're in themselves. And what they have to realize is that we're all that phoenix energy. Doesn't matter how right you are, or how righteous you are, or how wrong you are. It's all fire, and it's all going to go up in flames,
Yeah.
and it's all going to go you into ashes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I love that so much. And there's not too much woo woo for me because I I've said this so many times recently is that everything that has been called woo woo in the past is now being supported through science. So woo woo is just science. And I have to just share about Pluto because Pluto was somewhere when I've had my astrology read in the past. Pluto is a very important planet in my life. And so when they decided that Pluto wasn't a planet, I said, who made that decision? Number one. And then for you to talk about Pluto from that community and connection and that it's birth and dying. So I was having a conversation with a forest guide yesterday, and she was talking about how nature appears to be, and this is what we are, part of nature. So we are birthing and dying all the time. That if you look at it from a pragmatic standpoint, it looks a little brutal because when the lion eats the gazelle and all of that, this is the circle of life they talk about in the Lion King. But I was in the park watching a tree. A tree. Right now it's winter. The trees let go of their leaves. Or you could think it's a really brutal experience. They're dying. Those leaves are dying. And yet, just as you explained, it's this phoenix ashes, those ashes or the leaves turn into dust, which are sacred compost to grow more onto the earth. Our stuckness or our fire that we feel like that's energetically a negative thing is so important to realize that this is the alchemization. This is the firing and the purifying of where we are. And so, how do you bring that into the context of when you talk to women who are in their second stage who are these overachievers? Because that's really what I want to get to the point of. We could talk about woo woo all day, and I would just love that. And at the same time, we have to bring it back to these women that are they're trying to outrun themselves. I just see this all the time and talk to so many mentors, coaches for women that do that same thing. So let's talk about that, how you got to a place where you said enough was enough and how you're supporting and mentoring other women to do that very thing.
I really love the way you've framed this, and I thank you for bringing it back around to the people who matter, these women who are high performing and pushing. My particular story um, with overachieving is very much that I was, as a kid, I was an overachiever. It's a part of my personality to I just loved doing, and it was a way of playing with energy, and it was a way of playing with life. I wanted to run faster, and I loved competition, and I loved experimenting and making mistakes and doing it my way. And that was an important part of my natural personality. But on the other hand, I also had a mom who was very, very beautiful. And she had a natural knack for doing things well. She had a knack for doing things well. She was a great cook. She could get herself dressed, and she would look stunning, and she always took her time. It's not like she wore a lot of makeup, but I'm going to just drop a little bit of woo woo in here. She was an Aries, and so she had a natural glamour toward her and a very big personality. Now, that woman was the kind of she was the primary caregiver for me. And for her, looking at me, I was, kind of a sloppy kid. I was a little
Mhm.
chubby, and I loved being athletic. I was a tomboy. So she'd get my hair done, and then I'd come in and my hair would be a mess, or she'd dress me, and then I'd go out and play and come back and I was dirty. And it became I became the bane of her existence. It
Mhm.
was always like, you are just, I apparently caused her a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So the feeling that I got inside was that I'm always, I'm either too much or I'm not enough. And basically, being too much means you're not enough. You're not good enough. You're not right. Just
Yeah.
it was all the makings of being an overachiever. So I found myself going out of my way to please my mom. So I became a really big people pleaser. I became very much a perfectionist where I would perseverate on something until it was just perfect,
Mhm.
and that would burn me out. And it left me with, kind of this anxiety. My hair was falling out. I had acne, just all kinds of emotional and anxiety disorders happening inside. And there was always this kind of demand that was often spoken, but at some point it wasn't spoken, but I just took it on. It became a part of
Mhm.
who I am and my self-concept. The work that I'm doing now, the kind of way that I came to this was from collapse and failure. I just couldn't go on anymore. And the thing that's, I think many women will find, I'm not sure about how this works actually, but there's something about those of us who are inexhaustible. Like didn't matter how sick I got. It didn't matter how sick I got. It didn't matter how sick I looked. I would still keep going. I was indestructible in that way, even though I was contracting, getting smaller, pulling away from life, receiving less love, receiving less phone calls, of care, receiving less invitations to go out, receiving less sex, receiving less money, right? Receiving less joy from my food. Even though I was receiving less, I was doing more.
Yeah.
And I just burned out. I literally just burned out. And even though I had tremendous energy to go out and keep doing the things that I was doing, there was a part of me that just said, F it, I refuse. And so I sat and I did nothing and I did nothing and I did nothing and I let it all fall down around me. And it wasn't that I got so sick that I couldn't do it. It's that I just got so fed up that I wouldn't do it. And so I just stopped and let the chips fall where they may. And in the stopping, that's when I got the clarity, and that's when I had that shift. And I've been working on this for years, but finally bringing the words and kind of creating the final iteration of the system that I use with my women. That's where I am right now.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because I have heard this iteration of this story so many times in different ways, but it always ends up that we burn ourselves out. Even though you said you weren't physically sick, but your body said, no effing way. We're done. We're done. I'm sitting here. I'm staying here. And it's only when we get to that place when we are kicked in the gut, literally. And I've seen women go blind, lose their smell. They can't walk. I mean, all of these crazy things happen with our body rejecting this whole notion of going and driving. My personal philosophy of this is that we all got the masculine playbook, and it's great to have all that vitality that you shared when you started with as a kid. We just misdirected it because we got the idea that success was busyness. The harder you push, the more successful you are. And then all of a sudden our body said that's a lie, but we still weren't listening. So then you sat. Now tell me about that epiphany, that spiritual awakening of when you then you shut down. What came to you in those moments where you could be quiet? Because we can't get the message unless we're quiet.
Yeah. Um, I want to make sure that I make it clear that it wasn't just that I stopped. It's that physically, not physically in my body, but I just got tired because it's the contraction, the loss of friendships, the loss of relationships, the loss of my hair, the loss of revenue, all of those things. This was 9 years ago, right? All of those things,
Your other year one.
right? My other year one, seriously, right?
Yeah.
Or 10 years ago, really, because it was my other year nine.
Oh yeah,
It
the
was
other nine. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
it was a letting go
Yeah.
of that. And what I found myself doing at that time was I found myself trying to create something really big. I was putting together a retreat and doing all this work, and I was working, 60 hours a week and building things and blah, 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 blah. And I was just so on fire, and I was traveling. I was in Cambodia. I was in, just all over the world doing this thing. And then everything, like it's as if God was saying, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. So why don't I take away all of your money and
Exactly.
like we'll let you not have any kind of support in any kind of way, and then maybe you'll listen. And that's when I listened. And I remember thinking, why am I pushing like this and nothing's working, you know? It did make me look at it made me look at myself and explore, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? And it turns out that the path had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with the work I was doing. It had everything to do with the energy and my own self-concept. My own self-concept of I'm not enough was the primary driver. And I always say it was my fear of being an underachiever that drove me to be an overachiever. You know, I really believed I was an underachiever, even though I had made, you know, millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars in my business. I'd started businesses, I've helped thousands of people, and I still, on the inside, worked like someone who was an underachiever and who never had enough and who never was enough. It was never going to be enough.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of really allow that collapse to come. And in that collapse, I'm one of these people who, when things are going well, God, I love you, but we're going to relegate you to the back seat. Like I can drive this 50-foot yacht, whatever
Yeah.
that is. Okay. I can
Mm-hmm.
steer us to shore, God. I got this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that the problems hit, that's when I turn to God.
Yeah.
And I think that God knows this about me, and I think that I know this about me, you know, on a subconscious level. And so, you know, I do believe that I am the creator of my reality. And so it's not God taking away my money, it's Crystal Lynn taking away
Mm-hmm.
her money so that she can finally sit down and listen
Yeah.
and start doing things in a different way.
Yeah. Speaking my language, there I was thinking a country western song. There's something I can't think of it right now, but it basically is I only talk to God when there's something I need. And it's so true because we do that. And it really is this relationship that we're in. And if we treated relationships that we have in our 3D world, like we treat the relationship that we have with our consciousness, the thing called God, they would leave, right?
Right.
And God isn't leaving us, thank God. But
Mm.
it's really so important to acknowledge that. And I love the idea that you set this table with about this story about your mom. Because we as women have these incredibly connected relationships with our mothers. And for all the mothers out there that have daughters, I'm talking to you, that we have to begin to acknowledge that we were imprinted by our mothers, probably more than any other entity on the planet. And we don't have to keep buying into the story, number one, which you've changed your story. Also, for the moms of little girls out there, as moms, we love our children exactly the way that they are because that is where that feeling of self-esteem comes from. And even though you could acknowledge it as a grown-up now, it still lives in our body until we say it's not living there anymore and we connect to our higher mother, which is the consciousness. So I love how you shared that story. And I want to talk about that self-worth, that what you share with women that you work with, as far as I suspect that a lot of them come to you and that's their underlying cause, because that's what I see in women generally, is that we have this low self-worth. We don't believe in ourselves and we're not good enough. And that's a lie. And yet we've learned it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. On one hand, I completely agree with that. And but one of the things that I've been really perceiving in the last, let's say three to 4 years, it's not that these women have low self-worth, it's that they have incredibly high self-worth. and they put that self-worth even above the divine. So
Hmm.
there's this kind of thing of like, I can handle all of this. I can handle all of this. And I know that, we're saying that underneath in a subconscious level, we don't feel worthy. But actually, what I discovered is that I feel incredibly worthy in my ego. My ego feels
Your ego for
immense.
sure.
My ego feels incredibly worthy to take on the world. I would become
Mhm.
president if you would just see it my way, you know? And one of the things that I've actually stopped working with women on self-worth because there's no point. The thing that I have them work on is simply the truth. Right now, we work on what I call the truth with a capital T, and that is that you are a stellar being. You are
Yeah.
nothing but light energy, pure white light energy. And, if we plugged a battery into you or a cord into you, we could light up this entire city. And when we start to focus on that, especially at this age, now I have to say, Debbie, I'm surprised by how many women have not done internal work on themselves. I'm I'm surprised by how many women have not done shadow work. They don't do journaling. They don't do meditation. They're not doing therapy. That that frankly shocks me when I meet women who just won't, like, just don't get it. Like, actually, there's hope for you. But most of the women who come to me have been doing shadow work and
Yeah.
therapy and journaling and retreats. And, they're doing meditation circles and moon rituals. And they've done a lot of healing. There's always more to heal. However, at this point, for me, the thing about midlife is that we actually don't need to do all that healing anymore. Enough of the healing. How about you just make the decision to start believing who you truly are?
Yeah.
How about we use that intelligence and we just start taking actions like a woman who is a star? I don't mean like the star of a movie, I mean pure
Mm.
white light
Yep.
energy. What
Yep.
happens when you do that? Now, when I work with women, that's our starting point. And then when they meet a blockage, like when the assignment is, okay, let's say they want to actually write a book, when they don't do the writing, that's when we do some shadow work. But we lead, instead of with unworthy, we lead with, let's focus on your
Yeah.
worth and let's step into that light power and do all the things, the
Yeah.
habits, right? We do have to do subconscious reprogramming. That's a part of the work that I do as well, so that we can get those little hidden agendas, exposed and transformed. But for the most part, for me, it's about like just embracing your worth, and
Yeah.
embracing your energy.
Yeah. I love that reframe because that's really what the essence of what I teach and put it in a nutshell. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So we are all wanting to become, we say, this is what I want in my life. So we become that now. That is the energy. When you talked about the energy that we could light up the planet, we all have that. We are just, Einstein says, we're just energy. That's all there is. So we could just close the book and move on from there, except most people don't even acknowledge that they are that energy. So, how do you see a difference in the women that are in their midlife because they've been in this treadmill or this hamster wheel of busyness? What's the very first thing that you would recommend that a woman that can hear herself being described right now? And she's one of those women that you said, I can't believe that they haven't done this meditating, journaling, shadow work because they're still driving. They're still in that I'm going to drive, I'm in charge, I'm the driver of the bus. What's the first thing? Because they can feel it. I know they can feel it, and they're hearing you speak and they're hearing their little inner voice say, I think that's me. What is the thing that's going to give them the knowledge that it is them and that here's the next step that you can take?
Right. So the very first thing I'd probably recommend is to do a 5-second meditation. 5 seconds. It's all you need. Put your hand on your belly, put one hand on your belly, put one hand on your heart, and just 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, done. Okay, that's the starting point. Everybody can feel something when they do that, just for that 5 seconds. That's a great way to start. And if you can do that a few times a day, then do that. The next important thing for me is to actually reach out and get help. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Stop trying to figure it out on your own. Call a coach, call a mentor. That's my job. That is what people come to me for. They come because I have learned how to change, to transmute energy, to change women, to change circumstances, to change mindsets, to create a different experience. I've learned how to do that. You've learned how to do that, Debbie. Experts like us, that's what we are trained. We are passionate about it, and we build our entire lives on these principles. So we're experts. You've been doing it for decades. I've been doing it for decades. Reach out and get help. Don't try to do everything on your own. If you're going to do everything on your own, because you, for whatever reason, there's that self-worth, only you can do it the best, right? You only trust yourself. Very good. Trust yourself to write in your journal. That's a great way. Spirit is always here for you. Write in your journal, talk out loud, pray, do any of those things, but do something, and find the path that's going to lead you to your real source, because we should not be running ourselves ragged in the way that we are.
Yeah. What's downloading for me right now as you're speaking is we're moving into this era. Moving is a silly word because we're already there. The world of AI. So and this is a completely out of the left field question, because as you're speaking, sometimes I can hear women speaking, thinking, what are they saying? They're saying, oh my gosh, I don't need a coach. I got AI, right? And here's the thing, I use AI every single day, but I also do not rely on AI to be my coach when it comes to things like this. Journaling is such a beautiful example that you use. We have to get within ourselves. AI is a tool. So I don't know why this question is coming up, but I'm just going to ask it. If you have a woman, say, that's listening to this, I can just go on AI and ask the question, what should I do next? What prompt should I put in for me to evolve as this person that she keeps explaining? Because I'm going to tell you, there's plenty of women out there that are thinking that exact thought right now. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Debbie. Look, number one, if AI is working for you, go for it. Okay, absolutely. I had a period where I was so frustrated, and I needed that AI to help me to actually, and it did. I was like, yes, you are helping me. And for about 2 solid weeks, I was having a conversation with ChatGPT that was absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
And then it reached its limit. Yeah. Because what it did was it helped me for those 2 weeks, and then I quickly outgrew it because I'm accelerated. Now, I do strongly believe that every single thing is God's instrument. This pen is God's instrument. Can I receive, I shouldn't use a pen. And can I receive, wisdom from this case? Yes. If I project that wisdom onto this case, it's going to project it back to me without a doubt. The thing that I would challenge people on is, why set your standards so low? Why set your standards so low to use ChatGPT when there are actual human beings who have had wisdom, who have given birth to babies, who have actually experienced the death of a parent, the death of a child, who have gone through cancer, who actually know from experience somatically what it's like to receive radiation, what it's like to have to, you know, to nurse a child, to have a child who's colicky, and to be up, every single day for, for a year, like, and to get no sleep. Why on earth would you deny yourself the experience of working with someone who who can actually, like, talk to you on a level that AI just can't? I love AI so much, it's so good, but it is so limited, and it doesn't even know how limited it is, and which is wonderful,
Yeah.
because we humans are the ones who are endowed with these higher faculties.
Right.
So that would be my response,
I,
Debbie.
I I love that answer because it truly is. The bottom line there is AI is limited because AI is like our finite brain and our emotional body. AI will never be an emotional unit. It doesn't have the capacity to be emotional. You can talk to it about emotions, but it's never experienced an emotion. And we as humans have, and I think that's just the most brilliant answer that you could give, because we can use AI for so many different things, but it is that human connection that I believe that we're missing so much of that on this planet. We're all on these flipping screens. When I see teenagers sit next to each other on a couch and they're texting each other, what is happening here? You're
Yeah.
right there. You can connect as a human species. So part of that is I don't want that to disappear on our planet. That's number one. And it is brilliant to use a coach or a mentor or consultant for whatever you're looking for in your life, because there are humans on the planet that have, as you said, the experience that also translates into wisdom. So very much loved that answer. I want to talk about value versus being cheap, because we talked about that a little bit in our conversation earlier, and I really want to express to women about that big conversation. So we'll just make a little short version of it. But we don't value ourselves enough. We're valuable because we exist. I have a little poster that I have on my desk that we are valuable because we exist, but we have diminished our valuation, especially in a business environment, an entrepreneurial setting, to the point where we cheap ourselves out. So I want to have you talk about that a little bit from the perspective of what we can do as women to begin to value ourselves, not the self-worth value, but the value that we are contributing to the planet.
Yeah, wonderful. Such a great question. And thank you, Debbie, for giving me the opportunity to answer it. Um, it's funny, I was just having this conversation this morning, with my spirit guides, and
Mm,
because there are so so I have a value ladder. You can work with me and receive from me for as little as $97 a month, right?
right.
You can be a part and receive some really good stuff for that 97 bucks a month. Now, when you work with me one-on-one, the price is more. It's not really high. But it's enough that I feel like my value is being met in that moment financially. And I was challenging my own mind around my pricing. So I have a 1 year offer, and it's $16,000 to work in that 1 year program, to work with me during that program. And I was challenging myself on it because I wanted to make sure that I was in integrity with myself. And when I sat with it, the message that I got was that the value of what I bring is incredibly high. I have the ability to take someone who is in a poverty mindset and turn them completely into a millionaire, where they are literally earning the money. They came with just enough to invest in this, to invest for this 1 month, but then they kept doing the work and kept doing the work. They kept doing the work. Next thing you know, after a couple of years, there's a real business and millions of dollars are being made. You don't want to invest in that? Like the question is, what kind of price do we want to put on that quality of care that can take you from I don't know to I now know and now I'm thriving? I think that there's that understanding that what we offer can be actually priceless.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the understanding simply of the market. Understanding that if you're going to, for me, if there is a way to bring something to the market and look at what other people are charging and charge market value. I believe in charging market value. And people go shopping. If they want what I have, then they're going to pay me for what I am, for what I'm getting. It's up to me, though, to understand my value. And it's up to me to be able to do the work to help other people understand my value. I can't be mad at someone who comes to me. She, a woman who's been watching me for years. She doesn't know how to apply the principles on her own. She's watching videos. She's, attending all my free classes. She's doing her best, but she doesn't have, $16,000 to invest in herself right now.
Right.
The thing that I want to say is I feel like I can educate her by offering some things for free. Not all things, some things. Some things for free, some things for cheap that she can afford. And then it's up to her to actually come in and keep stepping up into this bigger level of herself. So for me as a woman, I don't feel like, and maybe it's also because I'm a woman of color and I've also been someone who has struggled with money. My struggles with money have nothing to do with me being a woman of color, but in my mind, it did. In my mind, I believed that. Okay. I did not understand that I am light and that race is just an opportunity, So, but it did give me some values that are really important. For example, the value of making sure that people who don't understand it get some help, right? So this is why I do a lot of free stuff. I have a lot of videos out there and a lot of, I do master classes and opportunities for people to just come and listen. I do a live stream every week, you just come and listen. And even though those things are free, they're my thoughts. And my thoughts are not cheap. Just being able to take one class with me, for even if I'm offering it for free and it's 15 minutes, you are going to get something powerful from that, right? Yeah. So for me, that value, I own my value when I'm charging a big ticket because I also feel like I've not forgotten where I've come from. So I take care of the people who are not able to be there as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I'm an abundance teacher, so of course that makes perfect sense. And I love that the idea you're connecting. There's two parties involved in everything, right? There's the person that we'll just use these simple words that people can understand. The purchasing client, and then you as the provider of the service. I love this phrase. I've been using it for years. Stay out of other people's pocketbook, because part of our value and worth conversation that we have with ourselves as the provider is, how can I allow this person or train them or teach them that my value is here when they have their own money story going on? Just like you said, you had a money story going on that wasn't true about how you looked or, showed up in the world in a package. And so it's not our job to convince them. Our job is to be in that frequency, that light. And I love the idea of being high ticket anything because it's the proximity. Because if we don't, as a society, even release this idea of time for dollars, because we've all been
sold that trap, and we walk into it willingly. And my value and your value has nothing to do with time for dollars. It has to do with what we provide, what we are serving the community with this light that we bring to it. And so that really is, as you said, it's priceless. And for purposes of understanding our receiving channel, it then has to get this number attached to it. So then comes the, okay, is that, am I really that valuable? Because that's the conversation then that we would have with ourselves as the provider, because it makes no bearing on that person that wants to buy this.
It's such an interesting conversation, Debbie, because I've not let go of time for dollars. I like time for dollars, even though it's masculine and people are like, yeah, just charge people for the value that you bring. For me, it's a lot easier to just put money on like a dollar amount on the amount of time than it is to put a dollar amount on the value, because you'll never be able to actually put a dollar amount on the value that I bring. You'll never be able to pay me. You'll need to give me $1 million, like, but I'm serious though, like, for me to help you change your mindset, how am I supposed to value that? That doesn't actually work for me. So for me, I'm very much about time. And trading time for dollars, because I'm not going to trade me for dollars. My time is one thing, right? And I can put some, I try to put value on my offerings, but then it starts to get a little bit complicated. So for me, I like time for dollars, and I put a little price tag on things that are actually tangible. So for example, in my container, I put a price tag on that. And for the, for my whole curriculum, I put a price tag on that. And I put a dollar amount on my time. If you want to spend an hour with me, that is valued at $1,000. And I have no shame saying that spending an hour with is worth $1,000. I have no problem saying that. Does it feel right for me to say that it's worth 2,000? No, that doesn't feel right. What feels right intuitively for me is $1,000. I've got a beautiful friend. She works with people one time a month, barely works with them, meaning she will meet with them for like 15 minutes, and then she does some behind the scene work. And she charges $2,500 a month. And I say, bravo for you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work for me. I like 1,000. And so when I'm working with women, I actually don't emphasize, I let them, they can choose to do it when they're saying, okay, this is the value I bring. I just want to charge this much for the program. Boom, no problem. Yeah. But I'm still old school, man. And I'm very Saturnian. Saturn rules time. This Aquarian in me is like, look, time. Time is important,
That's so
and I
adorable.
also give a lot of time as well, and I like being compensated for that. I have one client, and again, if I don't put a time limit on it, she will talk for 1 hour, and then she'll be like, so what do you think about that? And I'm like, nope, that's gonna cost you 2 sessions, right? You do realize you're into 2 sessions right now, and she's a multimillionaire. She can afford to do that, but I'm gonna definitely guard my time, and I'm not watching the clock, right? Because I'm not gonna be like, oh, okay, your hour's up, we're done. I'm gonna be like, no, we're taking 2 hours. That's gonna be $2,000 now. That works for my personality.
Yeah. There's so much layering in there, and the fact is that we all live in this 3D world. So as far as I'm concerned, if we're going to go back, circle back to woo, there is no time or space, right? There isn't. And this is a construct that we have on this 3D planet, this third rock from the sun. And women have to start somewhere. I don't expect anybody that you ever teach or I teach that's in their mindset about their beliefs and their story that I went from a job job just over broke to now I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I don't know what to charge. You have to start and then you keep expanding. I call it your mental equivalent, but it's your money bucket. You have to expand it. So yes, all of that is absolutely the case because we live in a 3D world and we have to understand that we can grow also. We can expand our consciousness to receive more in those bigger buckets. So I love that. I just think this has been such a brilliant conversation and I can't believe it's almost an hour.
Excellent. Nice.
Zip right along. I'm like your
Debbie,
client that just keeps talking, right?
you are wonderful. Like
Oh,
serious,
thank you.
so smart. So
Thank
smart.
you. Oh, you're so sweet. Well, it was a beautiful, beautiful time, and I want to end. I'm going to put all of your links to in the show notes. But what what can somebody work with you starting, as you said, one of these low ticket items? Because I always encourage my listeners to get into action right now after they listen to this podcast. Get into action. What would be the best way? I'll put that link on, but I want you to share what that would be to connect with you so they can start down on this journey with working with you.
Yeah, thank you. So I like my ebook. All right. I have an ebook. It's called Midlife Makeover, a high
Yeah.
performing woman's guide to reclaiming pleasure, power, and purpose. And
It's wonderful.
it's a great place. Thank you. Thank you. It's a good read. It talks about my journey moving to Paris and, how to basically kind of claim that sensuality so that you can live with live with yourself, right? Live with your feminine self, but also not be dominated by your masculine self. So it's a wonderful book for that. It's a great way to start. And like I said, from there, I've got a ladder, so you can step into things with me step by step. But the very first step would be that ebook.
Yeah. So the final question, imagine that you are at the end of your life, you're wise beyond your measure, and your future self is speaking to you. And she's telling you what sage wisdom you've learned, but you have it right now in a download, and you are sharing it with the women that are waiting to work with you. What is that wise wisdom that you want to share with these women before we leave?
That wise wisdom would be that we are co-creating every single moment with God. And there's a tarot card that comes to my mind, and it's the Lovers. And the idea is that I like to see God as the masculine, and I like to be in the feminine. I have the ideas, God provides. That's how I see myself. You can see it as you want, but for me, that works really well. My psyche loves that. And when I tuned into my future self, my wise future self, I had an image of my hand touching God's hand, and through that came or comes all good things in life. And so that would be what I would leave you with.
I just breathed that in. That's beautiful. And it really is the essence of everything. So thank you for leaving us with that beautiful note. And once again, thank you so much for sharing your life with us, sharing your time with us. And I look forward to having you come back in 2026 of the number one year, because that's when it's going to really start to blow up. So thank you again. Thank you again, Crystal Lynn.
Thank you, Debbie. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.